Hey everybody, happy Monday. You will see there's fabric in the shot. I'll move that out of the way for a bit, but I wanted to show you it's still in the shot. That's like a good thing I deliberately pointed it out because I have started costume work on Boss Fight, and this is not only my recording area, this is like my office for everything. So it's like there's leather strapping and there's feathers over there and there's stuff everywhere. And I'm always trepidatious when I first start costume work, not because not because I'm not looking forward to it. It's that I get kind of obsessed with it. And I mean, old school cosplayer, very obsessed with details and stuff like that. So it's like this rabbit hole. And it has to be like at least a week where I do nothing else. So that's going to be this week for me. I also have to do it not right before I shoot. I learned that the hard way with lady bits. I've already snapped off one nail right there. I won't do the finger because it's rude. But yeah, grabbed for a bin the wrong way. Snapped under the nail line. Ow. But that is what's going on. Little bits of paper everywhere. Zelda loves the bits of paper from patterning. But if you like this kind of stuff, if you want to see more of what's coming up with the Boss Fight costumes, the patrons are going to be getting sneak peeks. So become a patron, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K. If you want to see more behind the scenes stuff regarding the costumes for Boss Fight. I'm not going to spoil anything, but certain characters, like certain known characters, like Princess Sparkle Muffin and Social Justice Warrior are getting wardrobe changes in Boss Fight. So you will get to see some of that teaser coming up because, alternate wardrobes are a major part of video games, right? Right. And we are going to stay on video games today. This was an interesting kind of offshoot of what I postulated on Friday, but it's a tangent. It's not directly on topic. I still plan to go over that tomorrow, but this was, I try to do my touchier, feelier stuff on Monday. It used to be Mountain Mondays and Momo Mondays where we all sort of breathed in and out and sort of thing. But I like to ease into the week this way, start on kind of a self-affirming thing. And somebody sent me a message, and I'm not going to say names on this one because it's a tender thing, and please don't be an asshole about this. It's a tender subject. And it was interesting to me because it's one of these things where I know I feel a certain way about the topic. I know other women feel similarly about this sort of thing. But a guy was kind enough, and in this case, brave enough to get, or at least trusting enough to give me his opinion, on this. And it was about the thing I did last week and the stuff we talked about on Twitch about the Witcher TV show, and me jokingly saying that like Dandelion was good and gay, and Jaskier on the show. And somebody had a strong reaction to it. They hate, and I wasn't suggesting that Geralt and Dandelion were shipped. I saw it more as sort of an unrequited thing on Dandelion's part. But this contributor and patron had a very strong reaction to it. Can't stand Dandelion and Geralt being shipped. And the reason was interesting, because it's a different male point of view from what I would claim is the most obvious one. I won't say the most dominant one, but the most obvious one. And so I'll start there. The reason me and other women who are fans of The Witcher, especially the games, tend to joke about Dandelion and Geralt to an extent, at least not being totally heterosexual, is the amount of references, not so much in the third game. In the third game, they reduced this a lot. And I think that's an indication of the maturation of the studio. But in two, I don't remember one very clearly. That game is kind of a blur. But the second one made a ton of references to plowing whores. Just plowed that whore. I'm plowing horse and all that stuff. I don't know why I put a British accent on that. Did they have British accents in the game? Why does a Polish game have British accents? I guess because it's medieval. But it was always plowing whores. Just ever call plowing whores. I plowed that whore. We're going to get some whore of plowing tonight. And it was just excessive. And that's an uncomfortable thing for a lot of women because it's like, hey, yeah, that's how some of our male friends likely talk about us when we're not around, or at least talk about women. Sure as shit, they don't talk like that while they know we're around, but everybody's kind of like, women are like, do men actually talk like that when we're not around? And so when that was going on in the game, it was this, it's distasteful. It's, I know this is an immature word, but it's gross on a core level. The sex cards, the collectible sex cards in the first game didn't bother me. I know it bothered other people. I'm not getting into the morality of that. It just didn't bother me as a taste thing. It was like, oh, those are kind of pretty. I recognize intellectually that the idea of collecting sexual experiences is not the most mature thing in the world. But I thought the cards were very pretty. I thought the artwork was nice. There's a coarseness to plowing whores. And after a while, I stopped being annoyed by it and started getting giggly because it was so excessive that it was such an overcompensation. And it was when Dandelion in particular started going on about plowing whores. It just seems so out of character for him. And I'm not saying he hasn't said it in the books. I am careful about idioms like that because I read a fan translation. So I'm not going to talk about the books. I'm only going to talk about the games. And when Dandelion started going on about plowing whores, I'm like, dude's a bard. You would think he, of all people, would have something of an uplifted vocabulary. Like if it's a scumbag townsman or, a character who's intended to be kind of coarse, that's one thing. But when Dandelion starts going on, yeah, I plowed those whores, that was it. And I'm like, dude, you are not that kind of guy. And so it sort of morphed in my head to, oh, guys like that talk that way because they're overcompensating because they've got a gay crush on their friend and they don't want him to know. And so then it became a lot more tolerable to have these characters go on about plowing whores because then it's, oh, okay, we have one of these many examples in media, mainly television and film, but video games shares a lot in terms of narratives, though there are major differences. But it's one of those things where they tried so hard to be so overtly virile, masculine, heterosexual that it kind of jumped over the realm of heterosexual and into the realm of homoerotic overcompensation. And that's where I was coming at it. And, I mentioned in a Twitch stream last week that some guys get really mad when you joke about that. And like I said, this patron reached out and gave me a reason that is not just that, stereotypical masculinity so fragile thing. It comes from the negative impacts on men of this requirement to be overtly virile and openly, definitively heterosexual that I thought was much more eroded than it is now, but it seems like guys still have to talk about it. And this was a bit of a revelation to me. I mean, when you look at who I hang around, me and that sort of guy, we tend to not get along. Like, things come nearly to fisticuffs very quickly with me and that kind of guy. It's literally happened sometimes. Ask my husband. He saw a bar fight I was a part of. Not that I'm proud of that. It's just, that's so expected of me, isn't it? I won, by the way. But you know, I don't have a lot of insight into guys like that, because it immediately becomes like two budding rams, like an alpha and a wannabe alpha. And so I don't get a chance to understand this point of view. But what we're getting into here, and I'm prefacing this because I want it to be well received, because I know this is a tender subject. We're getting into this realm that is frequently called toxic masculinity. I'm doing air quotes here because some people see that as saying that all masculinity is toxic, which I don't want. That's not the case. And people use it interchangeably with traditional masculinity, and that's not the case either. We're talking about a what I call martial post-war masculinity. Or beefcake masculinity. You get into these, during the, like, when people started getting drafted into global conflicts, World War I, World War II, and in the U.S., Vietnam, it did something to depictions of masculinity, overt depictions of masculinity, where, dad was absent because he was off to war or working a job. And that didn't happen pre-industrialization, because pre-industrialization, dad taught their sons a trade. And so there was that time with your kids. Once industrialization showed up, kids were shipped off to the factories. They weren't trained in dad's vocation. They were a worker among the working classes, and then the nobility had its own issues. But then we got into the post-war era, where it was that father knows best kind of thing, and it softened again for a bit, because men were coming home from war. There was, the traditional masculine man was, gee whiz, the milk drinking, Clark Kent type of guy, mild mannered. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. But then getting into Vietnam, then we started getting like the Schwarzenegger and the Stallone movies and everything being very hyper masculine. And there are reasons for that. Notably, the U.S. was dealing with its first military loss. And so they started to create, the U.S. military history is full of noble lost causes, the South after the Civil War and Vietnam and all that stuff. And that's where we get this grunting, muscles popping out everywhere, hypersexualized form of masculinity that just isn't healthy. It's, a byproduct of wanting to encourage men to be ideal killing machines for the to be used as meat in global warfare. And we're starting to come out of that now, but we've got 2, maybe 3 generations of men who were raised in that zeitgeist. And that's, you see it in literature, you see it in the discussions men have, you see it in the way men act around each other. If you read super old stuff like I do, men are crying and kissing each other all the time. Like it's normalized. And these are like, I'm talking like Greek war epics and stuff like that. Men are crying and kissing each other, and it's in the Lord of the Rings because he was basing it on that. That's disappeared to the point that whenever you see 2 guys, and this is the point that I'm getting into here, whenever you see any physical affection between two men, some people put a homoerotic cast on it. And it was Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter fandom that made me aware of this, because, wow, there are frames on this and I was like, what? Really? Legolas Aragorn shipping. Didn't see that because I knew the source material. I was just like, yeah, that's Lord of the Rings. Q/fiction, apparently. And this has, and I want to bring this to people's attention because this apparently has a shaming effect on straight men. Gay men don't seem to have a problem with it. They're like, ship, right? One of us. But this has a shaming effect on straight men that I don't want to judge. I am going to ask a few questions about it because I thought that worked out well last week, that I asked a question and people answered and we learned stuff, right? And so this patron linked me to a Twitter that I'm not going to disclose the person's name because I don't want them to get bombarded. They have a fair number of followers, but they're an author, but I still want to be careful and not get anybody trolled. The person's name is Adam Smith, so no harm there of somebody Googling and finding this guy, but I am attributing. What he says is one of the greatest evils inflicted on modern men was the campaign to portray all physical affection between men as homosexual in nature. Men crave physical affection. We starve for it like we starve for sunlight, and we're terrified to voice this need. Men need physical affection beyond sex, but our society tells us any touch beyond sex or violence is the sole right of women and children. Grown men sometimes go years without physical affection, even something as simple as a hug. Some men cry even thinking about their need. This is not our natural state of being. Research shows immense medical benefits and mental health benefits associated with regular physical affection. This means men's health may actually decline as a result of this need going unmet. Suicide epidemic, anyone? Men are afraid of appearing weak or effeminate, but they're waking up to this need and breaking through barriers. My brother and I gathered with close male friends for his wedding. We hugged, grabbed hold of each other. We kissed each other fiercely on the temple when we parted. I grew up without physical affection, so I've made sure my 3-year-old son gets it by the truckload. So on and so forth. You sort of get the idea. It goes on for a while, but I was stunned by this because, I'm a hugger. So I hug my male friends, I hug my female friends, I hug everybody. I just, so the men in my life are not, that starved that it goes years without hugs because I'm a hugger. In my social circle, this is not something that happens. Now, I grew up around a lot of cultures where physical demonstrativeness was more common. The old Italian ladies and the old Italian, hey, kiss, the European clap on the back, everything, just, you're like, bleh. You have that one female relative and she's ample, and so she's got ample here, and she just, and smushes you in there, and you're like, can't breathe, no, but that's sort of the fact that there are people. And again, I want to make it clear, this is not across the board, clearly, but the people who are in this zone are clearly having a hard time of it. And, obviously now with the whole incel pejorative, bless you, Momo, this is deepening. Because now it's an identity, and now it's identity thrown at people as a pejorative, that once again reduces the beneficial physical contact men have to sexual encounters. And I completely agree that is unhealthy. That's unhealthy for men. That's unhealthy for women. That's unhealthy for everybody in between. Platonic friendships are super, super important in terms of mental health. I I personally think that having really great friendships that's essential. Sex with another person is not essential. Platonic physical contact is, in terms of human needs. Human beings need contact, not necessarily sex, right? Um, and that's precisely the thing that we see in media as, oh, the guy is not the boyfriend, he's the friend. Oh, you feel sorry for him. And that always bugs me in media, that's made to seem like this bad thing, this problem to overcome. Because friendships, close friendships between anybody are very important, right? And this gender segregated sorting that we do as a culture is not healthy. This is why I became so fascinated by, like, female performative behaviors and male performative behaviors, and what that means for sex and gender, and why some people feel so at odds with that binary that they want to remove themselves from it. Their pronoun is they them, instead of being, well, I'm male or I'm female. People just wash their hands of all of it. And that indicates a real sickness in our culture, that this patron who reached out comes at one way, this gent on Twitter came at another way, I came at it a third way, and some of my female friends came at it a third way. And there's many different people struggling and coping in their own ways with this issue. And so I think we definitely need more male-female friendships, more solid friendships on television, period, instead of romances being the big focus. I loved the show Elementary because it was the story of a great and very idiosyncratic friendship. But there needs to be more of that. Even like romantic partners that are great friends first, instead of them just fighting all the time. The love-hate relationship, or this big, drama. It would be nice to see romantic partnerships where they're also really good friends as well. But then also, more caring friendships between men that are not sexually attracted to each other, more friendships like that between women without the gay subtext. There's a lot of, like, guys who are struggling with this. There's a lot of shipping among female friends too. People just love to ship. Like, female fan bases, I don't know why, just love to ship. I mean, Supergirl and Lena Luthor. That was like, what? To me, like, why? Like, Supergirl reads is so heterosexual to me. They're friends. That's the whole point. They're friends, but people apparently ship them. Okay. But I do think, as relatively harmless an activity as that is, and I get that those sorts of explorations are part of adolescent development. I wish boys did it more, but girls, it's definitely more accepted for girls to sort of make up, imaginary, guys do it with waifus in anime, but you make up sort of imaginary relationships so you can sort of practice with. It's kind of relationship training in some ways developmentally. But I do think there needs to be some sensitivity paid to the fact that it does make some guys uncomfortable for very valid reasons. Now, I think the solution to that is to make just being male just suck less overall. Just make being male suck less. There's things about being female that suck a lot, and those should suck less too. And you know what solves both these problems? Stop putting so many rigid behavioral restrictions on people based on gender. the way you behave and the way you identify don't have to have anything to do with each other. You can feel male and not act stereotypically male. I'm living proof that, you can identify female with me-ish. I don't really identify with my gender that stridently, but, I don't have a problem with being a woman. If somebody asks me, what's your gender, what's your pronouns, I don't think before I say she, her, or I'm female. But it drives me crazy when people have expectations of my behavior based on that. When I get a weird look for really liking video games. Like, oh, really? And other women do it too, not just men. Men seem bemused, like they don't know what to do. Women get that, It's the same reaction to the plow and horse thing that I get when I say I like video games. Wonder if the two things are linked. I don't know. But we just gotta stop expecting, in this age of technology, rigidly gendered behaviors from anybody. People should have the freedom to explore what feels right to them without shame. And that to me will solve the problem. Oops, I killed my fill light. There we go. And that will solve the problem. And so I thank the person who passed this on to me, because it's a different side of the issue. And I like to hear these things, and I think it'll make an interesting discussion. So I'm curious, please don't be jerks about it. Please don't attack anybody else. I'm just interested in hearing your perspective on this whole thing about this own form of over-sexualization or hyper-sexualization, that any close friendship someone will make into sexual tension or a relationship. Have we just been trained to think that this is the only way two people could be close? Or is there something more going on? There's obviously a lot going on, and there's a lot of different motivations for this kind of stuff. And so I'm interested in hearing what they are, because obviously there is a very healthy fan fiction community out there that does this stuff all the time. But then there's this other side as well, where guys are still so, they find the implication that they are homosexual in some way so shameful that they're afraid to be affectionate or sensitive around their male friends. This is something we need to unpack. And I think the gaming community is the right place to do it, just because we're cooler than everybody else. No, you know what I mean. We play in other people's skins for a hobby. We're, I think, less, despite the stereotypes about us, we have less issues about this stuff than most people, because we're really not sex typical to begin with, men and women. So I'm interested, looking forward to your feedback on this. And this is one of those videos, because the topic that YouTube likes to demonetize, somebody reports it, or multiple people report it, and YouTube demonetizes it. So if you like this sort of content, and if you want behind the scenes boss fight stuff, now the costumes have started in earnest, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.